Me tūtahi ki te kanohi mohi o tēnei. Kia koe kākuta kei te mihi. Kia rā atu koutou o te komiti nei, anei rā te mihi ki koutou katoa. Greetings everybody, I'm assuming that my submission has been read. I'd like to spend this time talking about the neoliberal agenda of this government, previous governments, that's seen the rise of racism in this country, the marginalisation of Indigenous people and minority groups. That can be recently evidenced by the arrival of Destiny Church at the Child's Public Library reading in Auckland, and also the action of this government and the loss of hundreds, if not thousands, of Māori jobs across the public sector. Just a couple of statements I'd like to make. Tiriti o Waitangi cannot be rewritten. It was signed by two sovereign people. Māori never ceded sovereignty. Some people might say this is not so in terms of entering into treaty settlements. However, the return of less than 1%, which was immorally yet legally stolen from us, and or possibly in the future minds of our next generations. Remembering that 50% of our population is under the age of 25, we have a huge young population. I'm from the first urban-born generation of Māori males. It's from my generation that the abuse and state care inquiry has come from. That has not finished. That continues today with Oranga Tamariki and what's happening there. This is really about my lived experience over this period of time and my part in terms of teacher training across a number of sectors, including the government sector. I'd like to have a little look at the history of New Zealand, which is definitely his story, which is really riddled with lies and myths about Māori. One example, the Hun Report of the 1960s, say Māori were deficit of culture, and that was Pākehā culture. We needed to get our schools in preschool. Māori never sent their kids to preschool. The myth and lie that came out about that, Māori aren't interested in our children, and Māori aren't interested in education. A myth that was blown apart, even though it still exists, by the establishment of Kohanga Reo Kura, Wharikura Wānanga in the 80s. All of those brilliant Indigenous educational institutions have been curtailed, if not stopped, by previous governments. If we have a look at Aotearoa, it's certainly her story, as opposed to his story, her story of Papatūānuku, the abuse and rape since the arrival of Europeans in this land, right up to my biological mother, and the oppression that she suffered, being strapped at school for speaking her own language, being refused entry to places because she was Māori. My mother was part of the urban drift, which was a boom and then a bust, and with the bust came gangs and dependencies. That history, I'd like to quote a little term from Tina Ngata in her analysis of white feminism called Colonial Nelly, and the part that white women have had to play in the colonisation of this country. So it'd be worth reading some of her stuff. Some of the main points I'd like to look back at, if we look around about the period of time that I entered into this earth in this particular life, in the late early 60s and 70s, if we go through to the 80s, with this amount of time, want to acknowledge a report that came out of the Ministry of Social Development, headed by John Rangiho, absolutely stating that the department was riddled, as with other state departments, with institutional racism and unbiased conscious or racist thinking. This has been proven through research time and time again since that time, but nothing has been done with it. Because the other thing that came out of the 80s was Rogernomics and the beginning, and that was a Labour government. So it doesn't matter what government's in power, the neoliberal agenda runs.
Dennis, I'm just going to let you know that you've got about 30 seconds left, so you need to just kind of wind up.
Okay, not inclusive of what you just said, I hope. So I'd just like to say that it works for multinationals, it works for elitists, it works for few, it works for virtually nobody. Māori Marsden's analysis of Te Tiriti o Waitangi was sovereignty, was a relationship importance of that, was tohungatanga and expertise, was ukaipo, a place for everyone, but the parent vine was tahitanga and unity between all of us. This government, previous governments, continue to divide by divide and rule. Why are Māori being attacked? Because the Tiriti o Waitangi and Māori is what stands between the demise of humanity and the planet, basically.
Thank you, Dennis. We'll leave it there. We're well out of time, so we don't have time for questions. But thanks for your written submission, which we have, and for coming online today.
Now that's very interesting, mentioning about the urban drift and the bust of the urban drift that led to gangs. And I wish there was time left over for questions, because there would have been some very interesting questions that would have followed.
Oh, yeah. Look, Dennis had a lot packed into that conversation, from neoliberalism into institutionalized racism. I think what I really like how it ended on was discussions about sovereignty, relationship, and kotahitanga, and not a divide and conquer mentality. So I think that was a wonderful way for him to end. Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. Who's got the order, baby?